This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along here now to the Maroon and White pod. So it's a bumper weekend of action in round 3 of the group action, and I'm joined by Stephen Glennon and Brian Hanley to look ahead to the action. First off, Stephen, an exciting weekend obviously ahead for some clubs. They're going to be going straight through to the quarters, some to the prelims, and unfortunately some headed to the dreaded relegation semi-final.
Yeah, it's a lot of great games in there this weekend, and I suppose some have already qualified for the knockout stages, which maybe takes a little bit of the ability out of it. But yeah, there's still some good games in there, like the likes of Clymer and Daly and Kilconieron is going to be a big one. And then there are several others across the board that whet the appetite as well. Not only in senior, but senior B and intermediate as well. And with the new format coming in next year and the new structure, it really adds an untold dimension to it.
Brian, it's actually interesting for some of the games down in intermediate. They're actually very interesting this weekend because some of them some of them will be confirmed as a Premier Intermediate club, and some of them, unfortunately for them, they'll be confirmed as a junior club too.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake for I suppose for the development of hurling within the clubs in question, like that they're trying to grow, and that the higher the level you can be playing at, the easier it is to keep lads coming along. And it's like to stay in your senior championship with your club is more important for the juvenile and underage sector within your club, because it's easier to promote the game, it's easier to get people going to it, it's at a higher level. And for them clubs to aspire to be in senior, they need to be at the right end of that.
For sure. Brian, looking at your own club, obviously coming up this weekend against Thomas's, a great place for them to be in after 2 games, winning the 2 games, and obviously Thomas's will be favourites going in and they'll be looking to win this one, but it's a free shot too for them, isn't it?
It is a free shot for them. They've hurled very, very well. They had a good performance against Mike Cullen. They did very well to come back against Gort after a poor start, but they've been hurling very, very well. And there's a good balance coming into the squad, and they seem to be making very, very positive strides in the last 2 years, in particular, making to stay, regardless of what you say, their ambition will be to make sure that their senior A standard is this year. Now they have a free shot to get to a quarter final. They're in the preliminary quarter final regardless, and they get to pit their wits against St. Thomas's, which is brilliant, and it is a free game for them. But I'd expect them to be very, very competitive, and the way they'll be organised and set up, and they'll have a great chance at it.
What's got things back on track for you for Athenry? Is there one thing in particular? I know you give out a hand in that Senior B relegation game against Clymer a few years ago, but like to make the improvements they've made in the space of 2 years, because it hasn't been easy too with Athenry.
I think the structure was there, just the lads themselves were. There's a lot of them gone to America for summer, and different things was going on within the club. The club have put a lot of work into getting them back on track, and like Niall Sunderland and John Hardy have taken over the last 2 years, and they've brought a great structure and a great style of play. But I think the age profile of the group as well is huge. When we were successful with the club, we had young, we had middle-aged, and we had the lads at the latter end of it, and they seem to be getting that again. And it's a good balance there. What happened was really a lot of the older lads, we all finished up at the one time, and it was a stick that these younger lads were beat with a little bit, that they had to live up to something. They didn't. They'd only live up to their own standards and their own abilities, and I think they're proving that now, and they're coming in making great strides. In the last 2 years, been a credit to them, and you're very proud of them to see the way that they are going. And then we're now getting players on underage county teams, which we weren't doing for that 10 or 12 year period. We didn't have anyone at that level, and we're now getting that as well, which seems to be, it's always a help. The more exposure you get to high quality games, your club will benefit from it. And I think credit to everyone in the club. They've really, I know the infrastructure from the underage up is immense, and it's huge in what they're doing. And we have the numbers, it is a numbers game for a lot of clubs, and that's right, have a lot of numbers, and they're doing great coaching and great work with them, and we're now beginning to reap the rewards. But our age balance and our age profile is something that's beginning to become right, and when you have that, you'll have a chance. And plus, the likes of young Rabbit, and you have Keane Burke, who's injured, I know, but you've got your marquee forwards now that are beginning to step up, and you need that to win games at that level, and they're making great strides.
In saying that, Stephen, no point in saying otherwise. Thomases have been the most impressive team so far in this group.
Yeah, and in fairness, St. Thomas's, they'll probably only crank into gear now in the next couple of weeks. Ground is getting heavier, rain has come, and these guys love to go to war. And it'll be interesting to see how Athenry do measure up, because it's as he said, it's a shot to nothing for Athenry from where they've been a couple of years ago to now. And St. Thomas's are the yardstick by which most people or most teams measure themselves against. So I think this is going to be a cracking game. I doubt it'll be all one-sided or that there'll be a big margin in it, because Athenry have really progressed on from that Senior B win over Portumna last year and have kicked on. But this is probably their first big test they've had since then. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the likes of Conor Cooney, Ian Burke, David Burke. They're all wily individuals on the field. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they bring to it.
Yeah, Kenny Perk 4:15 for that one. It will be interesting too, Stephen. Cathal Burke's been left out of the team. Damien Finnerty's been left out of the team in the first few games. I think everyone's going to be interested with this Thomas's team sheet as the year does go on.
Ah, yeah, but then you have the likes of, say, Evan Brady. They got 2 goals. The last day you have the likes of Darren Farrell, Evan Duggan. There are names. They are continuing to bring through the one or two the last number of years to keep freshening it up. And again, I suppose there's been great longevity in the elder statesmen. And even though you wouldn't say that a lot of them, I suppose you look out at Éanna Burke and you still don't think he's an old hurler, because but he's been around so long, and they've had enjoyed so much success. So once you have an experienced core like that in the middle of the team, it's easy to bring through lads, and it's easy to fit them in. But yeah, there'll be a few eyes on the team sheet this weekend to see what direction St. Thomas are taking. But in fairness, they probably have 22 guys who can come in and do a job on any given day.
How do you see this one going, Stephen?
I think St. Thomas's, I think Athenry have made great strides, but you just have to kind of go with St. Thomas's. They seems to have the hunger back this year. They looked at the team coming towards the concluding stages of last year's championship, and they seem to have freshened up again over the winter, new management, and yeah, so it's like as I said, I don't think Athenry may be too far away, but I just think St. Thomas's will win this one.
Brian, how do you see this one?
Athenry win it.
Good man,
Athenry, yeah.
Yeah. Never go against that. No, I look at they're making such great strides. It's a free game, but it's one that that the underdog will always have they'll have a good bite. They have nothing to lose in this. They're not going to be knocked out. They can try things. They can concentrate whatever style of play they want against a bigger team. But like the real positive sign from Athenry this year has been they were in a bit of a dogfight against. I know Mike Cullen were massively down with injuries when they played them, but they fought well 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we ended up in that relegation thing. They weren't able to produce that performance against Gort. They were down 1-6, 1-7 to 2 points, and they came back. So they showed that's great character, and they'll be undoubtedly so well organised and prepared for it that I think they give Thomas a very good game. It's very hard to look at past Thomas's, but no, you'd be very proud of the way the club is going, very proud of the way these young lads have and this team has developed. And as if they're thereabouts with 15, 20 minutes to go, and anything can happen, and that's what we'd be hoping for.
Just looking at the other game, lads, earlier in that group, 1:15, Mike Cullen Gort, obviously loser into relegation here, and if it's a draw, Gort, they'll actually avoid relegation because they have a better scoring difference than Mike Cullen. Have you been surprised that Gort have ended up here, Ryan?
No, well, they were there last year as well, and they were lucky to stay up. But I think it was a last-minute goal against Mullagh, if memory serves me correctly. They've had a lot of different injuries and different setbacks in the last year or two, but it's been rather dramatic the way they've fallen. And I hope that like Mike Cullen have had a lot of injuries, and Mike Cullen there's a big performance in them in every year in every grade they play, and they're battle hardened. It's very hard when they call this. You don't like to see clubs of tradition and clubs coming along like Mike Cullen are for the last number of years in senior ranks, ending up in relegation. But I think regardless, these two clubs have enough players, and whichever one of them does does actually fall into that trap, I think they'll have enough to survive and come back again. They're also needing a bit of a run at it. You know what I mean? They need to get a run of games where they build up confidence in winning, and that's both clubs are suffering from that at the moment in senior hurling.
For my Collins, Stephen, no point in saying otherwise. Phil McDonough, he's played Fitzgibbon Cup level for Mary under Jamie Wall. He's played previously with the University of Galway too. He's a fair loss now for my Cullen.
Yeah, and you can't afford to lose a player, especially in a club like Mike Cullen that's trying to push hurling on and try and make that big step where they can compete more consistently with the senior teams. It's very hard to take one or two or even three out of it. You just it can't be done, and I think that's what's happening here. I still think they'll still have a good rattle at Gort the next day. Gort have played in patches, no more than in that Tenerife game, as Brian alluded to there, where they had a good start. And maybe their experience of last year may help them. But my Cullen are fairly resilient at times too, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lot tighter than many people expect.
And plus, they were missing Jeremy Devon the last day of my Cullimore. I know it was against St. Thomas's, and maybe they could have played him or maybe not. But like, you can't be missing. He's been probably their standout player that I worked with Fionn. I worked with the two Deverns, and the James Bradley there. They have a good core, like Ian and Oon. They have a good core of players there, and if they get most of them lads fit, that they are well capable of winning the next day.
For Gort too, Stephen, they obviously get Craig Lally back. Like he was a massive loss for them too the last day.
Greg has been one of the best centre backs, and he's played wing forward. He's actually probably been the go-to man a lot of the times for Gort. Getting him back is going to be a huge boost for them. And in fairness, that may again maybe the thing that'll push them over the line. Like when you have a experienced head like Greg, man the lines for you, it's hugely important. And yeah, see, experience comes down a lot to it in these games. And there is going to be pressure on both sides and both teams, both managements, and even the slightest decision that goes against it, how will people react and how will players react. But yeah, again, I just think Gort may just have enough, but as I said, it mightn't be as big a win as people think if it's a win at all.
You just see Gort pipping it.
Yeah, just pipping it maybe a point or two.
How do you see this one, Brian?
It's very hard to call when you don't know the injuries. If my Cullen were fully fit and had everyone that's available to them, I was actually in my Cullen a couple of weeks ago, and there was a subs bench them lined up with broken fingers and broken hands. So I don't know how they are from that, but if my Cullen are fully fit, and I think they may just shade this one, but it'll be very, very close, as Stephen said.
Yeah, I think that one will be very close too, but just gonna go with Gort just to pivot, similar to Stephen there. Stephen, on your own club, Crowell, obviously coming up against the county champions Loughrea in Group Two this weekend. Similar to Athenry here, it's nothing to lose. Sunday evening, 6 o'clock in Kenny Park, that one, but nothing for Crowell to lose here.
No, no, and I think Brian used the term already. It's a shot to nothing. They've qualified for the knockout stages. They're making great progress under Ian Daniels. There's a lot of young players been blooded into the side this year. You think of Kieran Lean, Nigel Kelly has been going well. There's several others, Lucas Keane. You could go on, but it's hugely positive for the club. And regardless of what happens on Sunday evening, I do think that Crowell are finally probably moving in the right direction. It's kind of, I'd say, the last couple of years, people, no more some of the players themselves have been disappointed that they haven't been getting more out of themselves. But just when Crowell go on this little run and they put a few wins back to back, they do grow in confidence. They're that kind of team. Like it's a big ask against Loughrea, the county champions, but no, I think they'll be relatively happy with where they are, and they can look forward to the knockout stages and maybe taking a scalp or two there.
You would even think, Stephen, if they could just avoid a hammering. I know they're not going out to lose it, but like even be somewhat competitive here with Loughrea, that can give them massive confidence too.
Oh yeah, and I suppose when they've played kind of the team informed teams the last number of years, you think it back to Clarinbridge as well, and even Loughrea. They kind of have struggled to get to the pitch of it at times, and maybe they got when they did get to the pitch of it, it was late in the game. So I'd say that's maybe something that Crowell could target this weekend. Maybe stay the course for as long as they can in that one, keep it as tight as they can, and if they can get to half time where they're within striking distance, like they should take huge confidence from that because they're a team then that as I said, when the confidence grows in them, that they will hurl with a bit of abandon. And as Brian has been there himself as well, he knows what's in the crop of lads in terms of when they get going, what they can do. So yeah, no, I'd be positive about going into this one for Crowell against Loughrea, but again, it's a big ask, I suppose, to call a win for Crowell.
What have you made of Loughrea so far, Brian?
Yeah, well, Loughrea are just doing what they have to do. They've a huge squad, really, don't they? Like you could have anyone up front, really. They've eight or nine to pick from, which is massive. Loughrea will be, they'll be there at the end of it, regardless. They've too many good players. They've a good. I keep referring back to, I suppose, when you're playing yourself, you always look to teams that are successful, and they always have this blend of youth and experience. And Loughrea are at that stage. Crowd are beginning to come to that stage. Crowd are making great inroads. They're playing a good style of hurling. They're not relying on Tom on. The last day he was quite enough, and they still produced a performance to win. Um, but Loughrea to me are there. They're the ones that have the bit of nous, and winning last year is really going to stand to them now, and they should be driving on. They have the quality to drive on. I think Loughrea Loughrea will should be Crowell. I think Crowell will be very, very competitive. They always are. In the bigger game, Crowell seem to just play completely free. It's the other games you worry about when you're involved in crowd, but they play very free. This is a free shot. No more than the Athenry Thomas's game. It's the same scenario. And I think, there'll be no whatever way the result is, Crowder in a great spot going forward. I find it hard to see Loughrea being beaten in this. And I think Loughrea, it's only after this that no more than Thomas and that when they get into the next phase, they'll want to be in the quarter final, not a Premier League quarter final, and just be preparing for that, and then they'll step it up again.
Is Loughrea's biggest challenge getting the best team on the pitch?
I think Loughrea's biggest challenge is knowing what their best team
Yeah.
is. Up front, genuinely, I think, you know, like it was a crying shame last year that they didn't win that semi final in the club for
Yeah.
themselves. I think they'd have won the All Ireland club. I really do. It was a game that they probably like because we've lost them ourselves, and you always know the moments that things could have been done a little bit differently on the field, and you don't get them opportunities every year. And I think, Loughrea are a very, very, very good club team, and there's no doubt about that. In not just in Galway, but in coming up against any other club in Ireland, they have the numbers, they have the quality, they have youth and experience, and you know what I mean. They're undoubtedly doing everything right in the 20 under 20 final as well. They're very, very strong, and you got to be fair. Both Crowell and Loughrea for the last number of years have been very, very competitive at senior level. To credit, they've always been there. I know Crowell maybe last year or two dipped a little bit, but they're back again. But I think Loughrea for me are the standout club at the moment at senior level.
What have you made of them so far, Stephen, from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think they've been going really well. I think, they've got a few players back. When you can bring Anthony Burns off the South bench as they did the last day and he scores 2 goals. And Brian said it there, they've probably 8 or 9 players that could play up front. And I think you can't go too wrong with playing any of them. And if one isn't producing, you can just turn around and you're next up, say. And that's a huge thing to have for any club because most clubs will be relying on they might have only 3, 4, 5 forwards and you might be converting a wing back to a wing forward or that. But Loughrea seem to have them in abundance. Like I said, I think Brian is right. Once they hit the knockouts, they're going to ramp it up a gear again, and they'll only get better and better. And the fact that they've that county championship underneath their belt, do not look to have any hangover from their celebrations, or don't seem to be sitting on their laurels. And maybe that All Ireland defeat has drove them on a little bit more this year as well because they know how close they were last year. So yeah, I think they're going to be dangerous come the knockout stages once again.
I presume we're all going for Loughrea there.
Mm, like Brian. I plead the fifth, but yeah. I hope to do Crowell do her with a little bit of abandon because if they do, they'll ask a few questions of Loughrea.
Uh, just looking at the other game in that group, Clymer Daly, Kilconieron, 4:15 on Saturday in Kenny Park. Going on form at the minute, Brian, you'd have to say Kilconieron are probably slight favourites going into this one.
This is huge. Like I live right between the two of them, and it's big. It's a big game. Like I was talking to someone this evening from Clonmerdale involved in the club, and they're saying like they need to get a win of games, but they're saying like is this the level they should be at? And I'm saying it should be because, again, going back to the earlier point I made, is when your club is a senior, you keep the young lads coming. And when you don't, both these clubs, numbers can be an issue. I know Kilkenny have more numbers probably now than they've ever had, but they're two good clubs. They'll both want to be in a preliminary quarter final without a doubt. But Kilkenny have been playing the better this year, there's no doubt. But I think, Jack Fitzpatrick's been injured for Clonmerdale, which is a huge loss. Brian was injured. Whether he's back, he played the last league. I think he's a thigh injury, he had something, Bino. So I don't know what's the story, whether he's there. But I think, Kilconieron did well against Loughrea, but I think they'll have too much for Clonmerdale in this.
Yeah, it's the thing about it, Kilconieron, the performances have been so positive, but the script could be flipped here in the opposite direction too.
It could be flipped. It could be quite possibly. And both these clubs always have one big game in them in the group stage, and it's interesting to end up the two of them. Where's this game on?
This is on in Kenny Park on
It's
Saturday
on King
evening.
Park. So it's a big game for both of them. Like, and like there's local rivalry is unreal between the two of them here. So like it's very hard to call. But I just on the form so far, and if with the two injuries that Clonmerdale have had, I know Brian Cannon's back, I think now, but I still would fancy Kilkenny if they have the momentum that they seem to have in the first two games. They may have too much for Clonmerdale.
Just looking at it like Stephen, Kilconieron really positive performance against Loughrea the first day. Made Crowell really work for it. Then you consider, I suppose, the concern about Clonmerdale is that return of 3-8 against Loughrea.
Yeah, but I think this is a one-off game. This is a cup final for these two clubs because the winner goes on into the preliminary quarterfinals, and it doesn't matter what you've done in the group stages after that because
Mm.
there's 8 teams there on an even keel, and they'll all like there's probably nothing between second and third in a lot of groups. But yeah, so this is the cup final. I think Kilconieron probably have played a little bit better, but you have to think when Clonmerdale have had to pull out big results over the years, no more so than against St. Thomas's a couple of years ago. Like they do turn over big teams. So this is kind of one of those games where they'll draw on all that. If Brian Concannon is fit to play, he's going to ask a lot of questions as well. So yeah, I just have a feeling Kilkenny may edge this one. But it's at the back of the mind then about that Kilkenny thing or Clonmerdale thing where they can just pull out these big performances. If they do that on Saturday evening, yeah, they could catch another team in the knockout stages with that kind of team. But I do think that this is probably one of the better games of the weekend because even the games we've spoke about already in terms of Athenry, St Thomas's, Crowell, Loughrea, they're qualified for the knockout stages already. How much bite will be in it is yet to be seen. But this will definitely have a bit of bite because there's a fair bit at stake.
Yeah, you consider the relegation to Premier Intermediate too. It's like no
Yeah.
senior club wants to be there.
No, and like Kilconieron and Clonmerdale have over the years have fought so hard to get out in get out of that rank. And Kilconieron especially as well. It's not long. They're not long up. Only a few years. So for them and all the work they're doing at underage, it's it's a big thing for them to stay up there. Like and they have the players and Ulta McGlynn and Ian McGlynn and those. But yeah, it's just going to be very interesting and it's going to be tight.
Yeah, I think that one is definitely going to be one worth going to for supporters, as we talked about a local derby there, and nothing between the two sides. If we look then at Group Three, you have Ardrahan, Turloughmore at 3 o'clock in Loughrea on Sunday, and Clarinbridge, Castlegar at 3 o'clock in Pearse Stadium on Sunday. Looking at the Clarinbridge Castlegar game first, Stephen, it's going to be very interesting with Castlegar now. Like they took an almighty beating
Yeah.
against Turloughmore. What's the reaction going to be like this weekend?
Yeah, and it's a funny one because Castlegar did get their win in the first round, and then got overturned big time by Turloughmore, who probably were stinging a little bit from their defeat to Clarenbridge in the opening round. like Clarinbridge, in fairness, against Ardrahan the last day, I know Ardrahan had injuries, and and that does take its toll, as we said previously. But Clarinbridge were buzzing with the two Nylands and Mark Kennedy, and half back line with Gavin Lee and TJ Brennan, and like so. These are going to be contenders in my eyes. And they just seem to have a hunger to go for goals. Just if it is taking that extra pass to to put a player in rather than take the soft option of the point. They've been doing that. I think it's what 11, 48, 49 they've scored over the first two games. So it'll be interesting to see what the likes of Matty Murphy and Joe Leary come up with in Castlegar to hold these guys out, because these are really on form at the moment.
Do you see them sticking with this sweeper system?
Um, I don't know. But I do know that, as the ground gets harder, and you've seen the weather recently as well. Like the first thing you got to do is stay in the game. And I do think that once you're once you do that, you have a fair chance of getting something out of it. But if you leave yourself open, it can be it can hurt you. Also, on that, like the when you have good forwards, you can afford to play a sweeper, and I think they have that.
Brian, what do you make of this one? Obviously, Clarinbridge, the form team in the championship at the minute with the scores they've racked up, and Castlegar coming into this one on the back of conceding 5-29 against Turloughmore.
Yeah, but it's a like for Castlegar, it's a huge game because they don't want another hiding, like they're a pro club. They don't want that. I think the conditions is what has caught Clarinbridge most so over the years. For months, the ground has softened and the quick ball wasn't going into the forwards. That does limitate your sweeper system a little bit because there isn't the free space like the ball holds up. It doesn't spin along. That can catch you. Whether it's a factor, now we've had massive rain this week, as we know. I think Clarinbridge will obviously win it. Clarinbridge will want to be in the quarter final. They'll want to pick the best route for them to get into it. I hope for Castlegar's sake it doesn't become a route like the last one, because that's not good for anyone. We're beginning to see a trade of that in the Galway Senior Hurling Championship, where there is big beatings being dished out, and you just hope that isn't leading to a big gulf in between teams, and you're nearly getting a separate section now with 5 or 6 teams who are doing that. But I think Clarinbridge they've excellent players. Like they've been the backbone of most county underage teams, and even your senior team now with Gavin and TJ at the moment. Like the Islands, they just seem to have a lot of players all over the place, and they're coming. And the more experience they're getting now, like there's a lot of them now with 3, 4, 5 years experience at club in Galway and not getting over the line. So they're becoming more and more dangerous every year. So I think Castlegar are going to have a big job in their hands to keep the score down here.
You just mentioned those big beatings, Brian. Do you think there is a big gap developing in the senior championship between the pack and the contenders?
I'm well. It's only going from results. I'm watching
Yeah.
a few games, and that there seems to be. I don't see the level. The last 2 or 3 years, looking at it, there hasn't been the level of shocks that there used to be one time where a team would come along and catch a team. That doesn't seem to. Whether the top teams are just becoming so well driven and so well managed and programmed that this isn't happening anymore. I suppose that Cappataggle maybe spun that a bit last year when they came out of nowhere. They were practically in a relegation game and ended up in a county final. But it's just a concern you'd have. You don't want to see Turloughmore dishing out like Ardrahan got in the heavy defeat, Castlegar got a heavy. You don't want to see that going on. Clymerdaley getting a heavy defeat. You don't want. That's not good for your senior hurling championship. It's not. But that's not at the fault of the teams that's dishing it out either. And they'll be in a position to do the same thing again. I just hope the Castlegar can come up with something and keep it as tight as possible. But I couldn't see Clarinbridge taking the foot off the pedal now.
What do you make of it, Stephen? Because obviously last round, I think everyone knew by looking at the results that there was a lot of one-sided games.
Yeah, but like I've said this previously, the teams are a lot fitter now. You've got a lot more players able to hit the ball from, 60, 70, 75 yards, put the ball over the bar. And a lot of teams have work on that, and they work on the accuracy, they work on creating the space. And then again, if you have a couple of county players in your squad as well, that really does add to it. And not every senior team has that, but definitely there's a lot more bigger scores being put up, and it tends to go to the favourites. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. Like, is it a population thing? I don't know, with people going and immigration and that. But then you look at, Clarinbridge, Turloughmore, like they are centres just outside Galway and have big populations. Oranmore have come as well. They're another big club with the population. But then you look at St Thomas's, who are probably a smaller numbers, but have, I suppose, a generational team, with the Burks and the Coonies and them, and they kind of book the trend. But it's hard to know. I definitely think that when this new structure comes into place next year, we might have a better idea of where things are at, because at that stage you will have the cream of the crop playing at senior level, and then you'll have, those that are striving to get there in your intermediate and lower down your premier junior as well.
Uh,
But
just on,
the big clubs though do have one thing in common, and they have the marquee forward or forwards in
Yeah,
Clarinbridge's case. And like it was always the case, even in our own time playing, we had Eugene. Like there's like you had the marquee forward that, and like with the greatest respect to Loughrea on the biggest day, the marquee forward probably didn't turn up for them the last number of years when they needed someone to go to. And if you look at Crowell were punching, at very high levels for years. But Niall Healy was probably,
yeah,
and correct me if I'm wrong, Stevie, if you think, but the marquee forward was there, you know, you need that, and you need the work. At Clarenbridge have marquee forwards. They don't have a forward. You go and talk, and we could name 4, 5, 6 of them, and
yeah,
they'll all do something. Loughrea are the same way now. Thomas's are the same way, regardless what you say. They've always 4 or 5 lads that'll come up in every game. They're never relying on one person to score. And that to me is the difference between the top 4 or 5 teams. If you want to throw, we'll talk about Turloughmore in a minute, but if you want to throw, you know, a caveat at them, it's the fact that the marquee forward probably hasn't been there for them, scoring the 1-5 or 1-6 from play in every game they go out, are marquee forwards. And I think that's where the Clarenbridge of this world, the Thomases have stood up, the Loughrea stand up, and going back to the Crowells before that was Niall was a big reason for that, Stevie. Like, and
yeah,
a major part in it. I know you need other people back to field and that, but you do need the marquee forward. And if you, like, it's transfer deadline day today, and you see Liverpool paying so much for Isaac,
yeah.
it's the marquee forward because they score, and that's true. That's in any team sport. It is that, like.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like Niall was, 1 in a million for Crowell, and he carried us probably, and I know he had great players like Toddler, Niall Callanan, you had Adrian Cullinan, Jamie Ryan, you had a good crew there, but without Niall Healy and even the frees he was taking from distance, you probably wouldn't have got there in 2015. But yeah, there's definitely a point in that. Well, if you can cultivate them kind of forwards and bring them through from underage up into the senior ranks, and I think that's the challenge for a lot of clubs, because when you're coaching, you try to put an emphasis on all players, and you just don't maybe see the skill levels that that are there, and it takes a special talent to come through, the likes of the Nylans and Mark Kennedy and those Tiernan Colleens and all those across the board. So yeah, like it's a thing. A lot of this, in my opinion, comes from the home as well. If you've a strong home where hurling is the number one sport, you can be sure that there'll be a lot of ball hit off wall, and that's where a lot of these hurlers probably hone their skills, and it probably took them to where they are today. So yeah, it doesn't just come from going down 3 times a week to the pitch. It comes from having lived and breathed it at home for most of their young lives, and that's what you definitely have. That distinguishes the young good hurlers, or the hurlers that are there, from maybe the hurlers that are just playing other positions where they may be picking off a point, or holding down a wing back spot or whatever, something like that. But yeah, so maybe that's way off the mark, but that's just my opinion. Comes from the home.
It even shows how strong Clarenbridge are when you can have Gavin going back in the
Yeah,
backs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Gavin was outstanding. I worked with Gavin for probably 4 years. I think it was between minor and 20s. And like, you couldn't dream putting him back in the backs, really. Well, it was kind of to the end of that came on board. But like, you can put him back centre back now, or wing back, or wherever they want to play him, further back the field, and you're still not even worried about your forward line, because you have so many up there, and that's where they're at, and that's what other teams got to strive to. It is a numbers game up there, but the marquee forwards are what clubs are really based on and winning on.
yeah.
Brian, you'd expect Cambridge to come through this one?
Would you? Yeah, I would.
I presume, Stephen, you'd expect them to get past Castlegar at the weekend, given the form.
Yeah, I do, and I really do hope that Castlegar can come with something, if only for themselves, because they did bring a lot of joy last year in the championship, and a lot of pizzazz and a lot of gumption last year. And I don't think they've become a poor team overnight. So maybe that's something that the management can draw on there to get a tune out of Castlegar this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you both there. Given on the form, I'd expect Clarinbridge to come through that one as well. Turloughmore meet Ardrahan in Loughrea at the same time at Sunday at 3. Uh, Brian, it's safe to say Turlough have fairly got their campaign back on track. Haven't had Sean Lennon yet. They'll be hopeful at some stage throughout this championship too to get him back in.
Yeah, and I just want to pass on my best wishes to Sean. I'm sorry to hear what's happened to him. I hope he's all right. But yeah, Turloughmore will, they're in your top 4 or 5 clubs in Galway competing for this. They've got they got caught the first day out, whatever. Their team was structured a lot differently the second day, and it seemed to pay dividends. I was very disappointed for Ardrahan. I expected, that there'd be more. They were, I suppose, the first game to find their season, against Castlegar for both clubs. That was a massive game, like, and for them to get that defeat, it has set them back because it was a group of death really for both Castlegar and Ardrahan, with Turlough and with Clarinbridge, as we've alluded to. But I think Ardrahan have been hit with injuries, but again, they're a club that can't afford any injuries, and there's a lot of clubs like that if they get 1 or 2 key injuries, that really and truly it is 40% of your team, really held back. I can't see Turloughmore not pushing on here, this, especially with their Ardrahan, the way their injuries are, and it's a, they're in relegation. They're no result can save them now at this stage, and I can't see anything but Turloughmore pushing on.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I can't see anything other than Turlough. It's just it's very hard to see this weekend, Stephen. Like it's no disrespect to Ardrahan, but the knocks they've had throughout this year's championship, Dark Fahy, Jason Kennedy, who's been getting huge scores. Obviously, Johnny Glyn's gone back to America. Like they're all big losses.
Yeah, like Jason Kennedy would always, he'd win you a couple of puck outs there in the half forward line as well and put you on the front foot. But yeah, like I think Brian is right. They would probably targeted that first game to get over the line and get those 2 points on the board. And knowing that you had Clarinbridge and Turloughmore coming down the tracks, it had to be disheartening. And again, even more so after the last day. Like there were signs in that game against Clarinbridge, where they had, after about 20 minutes, it was 9 points to 5, and they were pretty competitive for those 20 minutes. And next thing, I suppose the Nylands and Mark Kennedy opened up the shoulders at that stage and start picking off the goals and the points. And then in the second half, there was a period where I suppose a 10-minute period where they got a run again and they started to find the target because they had about 8 wides in the first half, if memory serves me right, and they just started to find the posts again. So, I do think they're facing an uphill battle here, but if again, it's all about staying in the game for this one again, and making sure that they're within striking distance at half time. Because if it gets away, if they let go of Turloughmore's coattails, it could be a bad one for them. And in fairness, it's not the best way then to be going into a relegation battle. So yeah, I'd say Turlough, if they're just looking at their spread of scores here from the last day, from Killian Whelan with his 2 4, Sean Loftus 4 points, Matthew Tarpey 2, Jamie Holland 1 6, 2 from frees, Tom Quirk 1 3. Like, there's so many, I'd rather have so many players now to tie up on Saturday. So yeah, it's going to be tough for them.
But
Then
for Castlegar and Ardrahan, regardless of the next game they're playing, they'll be looking for something to base their training off the next 2 weeks. They'll be looking for a performance. They'll be looking for something to give them an edge going into the next game, albeit they'll be in 2 different directions. One will be Premier League quarter final, one will be in a relegation. And but they'll be looking for signs that, that they did play the two probably the top teams in Galway, and that they did get, but they'd want to be holding on to, not getting the second beaten. But if they do, they're going to have to react. I saw your reaction is with the club and where you are, and it's very hard for both in clubs if they get a second chance on where they come back from. But I think more so for Ardrahan going into a relegation game, they'll be looking for some sort of form, some sort of a performance, and I think that's what they'll be both in clubs we talk about this week. Is if I was with them, would be your performance. Just play the quarters and see where it gets you.
it was interesting too with Turlough. They tried a few things in the first game. They obviously had Dahi up in attack, but they moved it back around. They moved him back into defence. You had Tom Quirk, you had Jamie Holland, Connor Walsh, Sean Loftus, Killian Whelan in attack.
Yeah, but they have the numbers as well. Like they have good like if you all them you've named there have all played underage with Galway. They've it's their time now to step up. Like and they're getting a better balance. They need to make sure that they get this quickly while they have Dahi because when Dahi goes, he's a massive loss for anyone. Um, whether they tried that out against Clarinbridge the first day and let it off. Now they're back on track. You know what I mean? They'll nothing venture, nothing gained as far as they be concerned. But I think both Turloughmore and Clarinbridge have so many good young lads there now and so many good coming along that they're beginning to find a balance in a team and that makes them very, very serious contenders for the end of the year.
Looking at Group 4 then, lads, Cappataggle, Sarsfields, Oranmore-Maree, Tommy Larkins. This could get very interesting come half 7 Saturday evening, Stephen.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. I think the Oranmore-Maree one and Tommy Larkins will in particular. That's for Cappataggle and Sarsfields is a local derby. Sure, what am I saying? Yeah, there's both games are mouth-watering. I suppose I'm hitting for the Oranmore-Maree Tommy Larkins, and I just want to see how Tommy Larkins will respond to their defeat last day to Sarsfields against an Oranmore-Maree team that have two wins on the bounce now and are into the knockout stages. So yeah, I think that Oranmore-Maree have learned from last year. They got overturned by Sarsfields in dramatic circumstance last year, and they've obviously gone away and looked at things and improved on what they've had to improve on. And it's bearing dividends now. So Tommy Larkins, yeah, didn't get to the pitch of it the last day at all against Sarsfields. Um, they they kind of started okay, but once Sarsfields started picking off the points and Alex Kinnear was back in harness for Sarsfields, and I think it was 5 points he clipped over, and there were one was each as good as the next, and he was a big boost to Sarsfields. And then you had the likes of Kevin Cooney running down through the centre, and uh, dissecting that Tommy Larkin's defence at will, which you don't always see because, in fairness, they have been a very good championship side over the last number of years. So for Sarsfields, it was a big win for them. Um, uh, so yeah, and then Tommy Larkins. Then I just think that there might be a kick in them this weekend, and maybe with Oranmore-Maree having already reached the knockout stages, and Tommy Larkins looking to get another win on the board or get a win on the board, they'll have. Yeah, I think this could be a very interesting one.
Yeah, looking at the way the group is at the minute, Oranmore-Maree, they're through already to the
Yeah,
quarterfinal on 4 points. Then you have Sarsfields 2 points.
they're
Uh,
on point.
Tommy Larkins point, Cappataggle a point,
Yeah,
and Larkins are 43, Cappataggle are 39. So Cappataggle will need more than a 5 point victory if themselves and Larkins both get the win there. So that will be interesting to see how I suppose Larkins, Cappataggle and Sarsfields, I'm sure they'll be keeping an eye somehow on how the other games are going somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, Sarsfield's Tommy Larkin's game was Tommy's did start well, and then Sarsfield's tore them apart. They outplayed them completely. It was watching the game. It was funny. Tommy Larkins had so many puck out routines in the beginning, and then it just went route one. Do you know what I mean? And they didn't create anything. No, they did. Sorry, they did create some in the second half. They had 5 or 6 wides in a crucial period of the game. They got the 2 goals when the game was over. But they didn't. They weren't able to handle Alex up front. They weren't able to handle the movement up front. I think Kevin Cooney got all his most of his scores are frees. The Saracens were good value for their win. Oranmore have got a big question now. Oranmore are in the under 20 final in Thursday week. Where do they go? There's 7 of their players involved in that team that's on their senior team. What do they do?
Uh,
For me, I think Oranmore-Maree have got to stay winning senior games.
yeah,
But they've got an under 20 a title to play for in a couple of days' time. And I think they need to win that to push on their senior status as well. But I believe for the likes of Oranmore-Maree that they can't not win the next senior game and get them on 6 points and win a full games. Just from the base of where they've come from and where they were and what happened to them last year, I think winning is what they need to keep doing. For me, I think they'll beat Tommy Larkins if they do. If they do turn up and play it, I think Sarsies will be Cappy, and it will be down to what happens with the scoring averages and whatever happens there. But I think for me, I think Sarsies will have too much. Cappy are very, very disappointing against Ardmore. There was a lot of controversy and hassle after the game that doesn't do any club any good. Um, and that's not it's not good to hear. It's not, no one wants to see that what happened there. And then you've got Tommy's, who I don't think have hit the levels they were at last year. So for me, I think it'll be one of Cappy or Tommy's going out the trapdoor.
It's funny, Brian, because a few weeks ago I had Alex Kinnear on the podcast and he was talking about the defeat last year to Cappataggle, how much it hurt, and you could just hear it in his voice of how much that did hurt Sarsfields because they were 7 up in that game last year in the quarter final.
Well, they were cruising, but I suppose the only thing going back to Cappy last year is they were practically out or in relegation. I think it was Mullagh they beat
Yeah,
as well, from a correct, and they ended up in the county final, and they got momentum from that. Like Liam Collins didn't score the last day against Oranmore-Maree, like which is their style of play seems to have changed a little bit this year. They seem to be not going as direct as they were last year with the ball. One game I saw them playing this year compared to what they were doing last year, it didn't seem as direct. It didn't, and that doesn't suit Liam and others up there because that's what they feed from. They seem to be playing it more through the lines. I don't know whether that is the case now, but that was my just interpretation of the way they were playing. But I think it's a big game for Sarsfields because if Sarsfields lose the game and both
they could.
Collins and Cappy win, Sarsfields relegation. So but Sarsfields played very well against Tommy Larkins. To be fair, their brand of hurling was very good. But I still think that if Cappy have to have a massive performance because it is do or die for both them and Tommy Larkins the next day. It's not good hurling for them now.
How do you see the Sarsfields Cappy game going, Stephen?
Yeah, I think Sarsfield, like Cappy, have just not been going as well as last year, and for whatever reason, they just haven't hit the same heights that they produced in the knockout stages last year. Sarsfields, on the other hand, will have a cause, and a Sarsfield team with a cause is a team that's hard bet. They do seem to be playing the better hurling at the moment, and yeah, I think Sarsfields will get over the line in this one by 3-4 points.
Do you not think there'd be a kick, lads, in Cappy this weekend, considering county finalists last year?
Yeah, and that is a possibility, but I think Sarsfields. I think that revenge mission is strong for Sarsfields. Like they won't, and it's local derby as well. You don't catch Sarsfields too many times on the hop, which Cappy probably did last year, coming from that 7 points down. I just have a feeling that Sarsfields will get over the line in this one, and that maybe the curse for them. But I do think they have enough going on what I've seen so far of both teams. I do think that Sarsfields are better poised to win this one.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give the nudge to Cappy there. I think there might just be in a kick in them. They came so close last year, and I think it would be really disappointing for them to go out this early, no more so for themselves. Just interesting, Stephen Bryan talks there about the under 20 final coming up for Oranmore-Maree too against Larkins. Like it's an interesting one. You don't have a game for 4 weeks, so you want to keep that momentum going, keep that winning feeling going. But obviously, a big final to come up for the club too.
Yeah, but I think you can only play the next game in front of you, and I think that if Oranmore don't go in and go and put their best foot forward against Tommy Larkins, you don't know what could happen. Like they could pick up a couple of injuries regardless, or over the next few days of training or whatever. Like you just have to play what's in front of you, and getting 6 points on the board and going straight into the quarterfinals like that with 3 wins under your belt is massive psychologically. So I don't think they can afford maybe to be looking too far ahead to the under 20 final. What is it, 4 days later or whatever? Just I think they really have to hone in on this game and make sure that they keep the momentum going in their favour, because sometimes when you have momentum you need to use it. If you try and break it, and I've seen this again, I think I remember Galway were going really well in the National League a number of years ago, and they were qualified for semi-final I think it was, and they decided to put out a weaker team against Dublin in the last game, and Dublin overturned them, and when they went into the semi-final they were well undercooked. So I think for Oranmore-Maree, particularly given that they're a club that's progressing, they have to keep that momentum and get the win over the weekend.
And plus the caliber of teams, Stevie, that they'll have got their victories against.
Yeah,
Like they're no them clubs are in the top tier of senior hurling, like Cappataggle, Tommy Larkins and Sarsfields. Like and no matter what team, what club you're with, if you beat the three of them to qualify, you're going the right direction. It gives you great confidence. It gives you great belief in what you're doing in your systems and your processes and everything. It's I'd be of the same caveat as you. I think that you have to stay winning when you're winning, because that becomes a habit, and I think they'll win on the 20th. I think that they'll win that, I think, as well, but they need to keep pushing on with that.
yeah.
What do you think is the realistic goal for Oranmore-Maree this year?
I think we're more American. like they're in a county quarter final. Like depends on who they get. They're going to avoid the top four, obviously. Um, like they're looking at a semi final. You just don't know. Would you have said at this time last year the Cappataggle would have ended up in the final? You probably wouldn't have. And Oranmore-Maree have a lot of good players. They have a lot of, you know, they're consistently now beginning to fight at the top table. I know last year was a goal in the last second with John Cooney that robbed them, but they're beginning there, and that defeat can bring an awful lot of the want to make sure we're going to correct the wrongs. They have a lot of good young players, like Rory Burke's a fabulous player. They have a lot of good talent in there. And I think the Steel, it's wherever they want to take it themselves. It's probably a year or two, I think, probably too soon for them, but you can never tell. You don't know where a team comes out of. They'll get a lot of experience, and the more experience to get at the quarter final and even the semi final stage, and who knows the final stage, that'll keep them going and bringing them on and bringing them on. I think winning the under 20s will be a huge thing for them in the club as well, because that's the senior title.
Do you see them as contenders this year, Stephen?
Not this year, but I do think if they get to the last four, as Brian said, the amount of times you kind of nearly have to keep repeating and getting yourself and putting
Yeah.
yourself in them situations before you get the experience to go on and challenge for a title. So definitely a semi-final as well within the remit. If they got there then and they were very competitive, which they should be, I think that would be a good year for Oranmore-Maree. Then next year, then obviously they say, well, let's push on one step further. But a lot of this time for a young club like Oranmore-Maree, that's not long back up in senior, that they have to realize that there probably are going to have to be a few days of hard knocks. The knocks got a hard knock last year, with their championship, and they've progressed from that, and now they're into the knockout stages. So I think just if they could get into a semi final this year, that would be brilliant for the club. And with the young players they've coming through, then they're setting themselves up then to challenge, because I just think that the likes of Loughrea, Clarinbridge, Turloughmore might just have a little too much at this moment in time for them, but they're not that far away.
Just on that Larkins or more, Stephen, how do you see that one going?
Yeah, I think if Oranmore come and approach this game in the right manner and look to lay down a marker for going into the knockout stages, I think they'll win it. Um, but again, Tommy Larkins, no more than you said about Cappataggle, to be a disappointing year for them. Given they got to the final, Tommy Larkins have been performing consistently in the championship in recent years. Getting to quarterfinals, semi-finals. Like they have to probably come with something. But I just think that Oranmore-Maree have a little bit of momentum now, and they might squeeze over the line this one.
Uh, just looking then, lads, at the Senior B Championship at the weekend. Ballinderry and Tina Aberdeenry half one in Loughrea on Sunday there. There'll obviously be added spice to this, Brian. They met in the intermediate final a couple of years ago where Ballinderry came out on top on that occasion.
Yeah, it will, and they're two great clubs. The way that they're consistently driving on the senior. I think Ballinderry will have too much, but this time around, but they're very very competitive. It's very very competitive league that to get out get promotion up from it. But I think Ballinderry probably for me, they'll be thereabouts. The longer this goes on, that I think Tina probably are suffering a little bit from what's happening previously, and I think Ballinderry are the farm team going into this.
Yeah, like a win for Tina could bring them back into the championship. Obviously, if they lose, they'll finish bottom. They won't get relegated. They'll be a Premier Intermediate club, anyways, next year. So they are sort of fighting for their lives to get back into this championship. But as Brian mentioned there about Ballinderry, they've been impressive. Like even the way they fought back, Stephen, against Kilnadeema in round two.
Yeah, and again, like that opening win against Lee Mellows, like Lee Mellows are no slouches, and it would have been targeted in that game. And from what I had heard, Lee Mellows were going really well. But like Ballinderry just have this in their barrow. Like they go out with a Portumna a couple of years ago and they hit them for I think it was 3 goals in the first half. Like when Ballinderry turn it on, they're a great sight to watch. And again, I do agree with Brian this one. I just think they might just have a little too much for Teen Aberdeen in this occasion.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Tina there. I think they'll get their first win in the group. Now, it mightn't be enough. You could have a scoring difference there between Mellows, Ballinderine, and Tina all coming in if they all do finish on 2 points. But interestingly, then Kilnadeema play Lee Mellows at half one in Kilbegany on Sunday. Stephen here. If Mellows can get a win, they go on to 4 points, join Kilnadeema on 4 points, and could get in straight into semi-final here with the head-to-head rule.
Yeah, and Lee Mellows probably were disappointed with the first round defeat, but they have a lot of experience in that team. Like you only think it's not that long ago when they were contesting semi-finals and county finals, and they still have players from those teams back in the late 2017, and that they still have them players around, and that's huge. I just don't know if they have the depth maybe that maybe other teams have, and maybe that's the thing why a lot of B teams are down in Senior B because they just don't have that depth that other teams up in Senior A enjoy. But I think this kind of time of year suits them. Kilnadeema Leitrim though have been the form team. It's a really hard one to call. Yeah, I just have a fancy for Lee Mellows for some reason. I don't know why. It's just maybe having played them so many times before and seen what the when they get stuck into the trenches, they're well able to battle. So that could be a big thing this weekend for them, and that's a huge carrot to try and make it straight into the semi final as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one here. Kilnadeema have obviously been one of the form teams, Brian, there, as Stephen mentions.
Yeah, they are, and they've got good depth as well in what they have. They've got good forwards. They're a solid team. Like they did well to hold on the last day. It's a good sign of a team. It's hard to even think in Lee Mellows been in where they are because you still associate them with winning the County Cup only a couple of years ago. Beat Kilnadeema. When it was with Crowell 3 years ago, whatever it was, 4 years ago. We played them in a county quarter final. They had a massive win over Turloughmore to get into that. So the both sides have previous form. They have a lot of tradition. They have a lot of good players. It is very, very hard to call. And again, a lot of it could come down to the conditions. A lot of it, you just don't know. I don't know what way this one will go, to be honest. Maybe it's about time someone said a draw.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be too far off with that one there. I'm going to go for Kilnadeema. I think they can make it 3 from 3. Uh, Looking at Group 2 then, lads, Portumna Mullagh, 2 o'clock in Duggan Park on Sunday. It's fairly simple here, Brian. Loser of this game out of the championship.
Yeah, it's remarkable the way I was surprised with Portumna the manner of their defeats. I think really in the scoreline I haven't obviously seen them, so I'm not I'm not commenting about their style of play or anything. It's just that the defeats they've taken. Like Mullagh were in a puck of a ball of staying up last year. You know what I mean? That they in that game. I think judging by what's going on, it's hard and you just don't know what injuries or what is behind the club or what's happening. But they're two big clubs to be playing this game. And you fear for clubs like this if they get into this sort of a rut, like because you'd hope that they have a lot to offer into Galway GA and senior hurling in particular. I think Mullagh may have enough, but you just don't know what way Portumna are going to turn up.
Yeah, it has been surprising, Stephen, considering they were so close last year against Athenry.
Yeah, and like the reports were that Portumna were going well in pre-season, and we're all primed for this championship. But Asprophone had different ideas first day out, like 136 of some shooting in the game. Um,
Unbelievable.
yeah, serious. And you look at even Portumna forwards, like you have Ron O'Mara there, Declan McLaughlin, Joe Canning, like they're serious forwards at that level. And to think that they're not able to put up big enough scores to overtake Hascrophone. And Hascrophone, let's remind our listeners here that last year they were in the relegation final against Baha, and that was one hell of a dogfight. And if you had said that they would be going as well this year, I wouldn't have believed you, to be quite honest. Coming away, I think it was in Carnmore that day. So what they've achieved is truly spectacular in one way because the scores they're putting up, and Carl Mannion's form is just the talk of the county at the moment, for both county and club. So Portumna though, yeah, they've a big one now against Mullagh at the weekend, and Mullagh love nothing more than these sort of tight games where it's all on the line. Yeah, I think Mullagh could just pip this one, unless Joe can produce something spectacular, and which he has done in the past, and dig them out of a hole. And I remember them playing Crowell in a relegation game a number of years ago there as well, and they were going badly at that stage, and they pulled it out of the hat to get the victory. So yeah, that's another hard one to call, to be quite honest.
I
Yeah,
think I think what we're discussing there as well, sorry, you could cross you, Paul, is the likes of last year, Portumna get a chance to beat at the night to go up to Senior A, and they don't get that. And next thing is free fall, and it is free fall, and that's the fine margin. Then going back to what we're talking about against Oranmore and different clubs, you have to win what's in front of you because that does build momentum, and it's very easy. When you start winning games, it becomes a habit. But when you start losing, it's very hard to stop that road and turn it around and make it go back the other way. And that's possibly both clubs in Mullagh and Portumna are facing that dilemma at the moment. And whichever one of them wins the next day, they'll still have a big involvement in what happens in the championship because that will breed the confidence they need to go on.
yeah. I just fancy Portumna there. I think Joe Canning, Declan McLaughlin, Ronan O'Mara up top. I think they could get a lot out of those three at the weekend. Looking at the Haskell, Fohana and Port Pierce is 3:45. Duggan Park, it's a double header, and with Portumna and Mullagh. Uh, Brian, they're two of the form teams here in the Senior B Championship.
And yeah, that'll be a cracking game because
Mm.
both of them want to have a right cut of each other. I think Haskell has been, it's brilliant to see what they're doing. You know what I mean? It's two Manions, obviously they have the marquee players again. They have the forward that I'm on alluding to, but I didn't see Corey Pierce is coming back with the they've always been consistent. They've always been hard to beat, no matter what level they played at senior. They've always been there. But I think a Haskell just that whatever's happened this year, they've stepped up and they seem to really have good momentum going with them. You just hope that they haven't peaked too early. That'd be the only thing to be worried about there if you're over a team. But I think they'll have too much for anyone as it is at the moment. And can anyone handle Carl Mannion? I don't see it in senior championship, not to mind senior B or.
Yeah, it's very hard to look past them, even despite Port Pierce's start too, Stephen.
Yeah, like apparently Haskell Vaughan have put in a lot of work in building a good management team and a good management structure there, and they're obviously getting the maximum out of the players, and have improved them, and that's reflective in the results. For Porrick Pierce, as Brian said, they've always been a good consistent senior team. They'll always pull a win here or there, to keep them competitive at whatever grade they're in. But I think this year putting two wins back to back has given them huge belief, and the fact that they will go into as the underdogs in this game gives them a slight chance. And again, it could come down to a mucky day, a wet day, or and anything like that, and maybe the scoring power, because these other two games haven't played in dry conditions, mightn't just be as strong on a Haskell Fohana. So I do think a Haskell Fohana will win it, but I think Pierce might just ask a few questions of them.
Yeah, the winner in that one will go straight through to the semi, and then second and third cross play in a quarter final. But at the minute, you would have to say Kilnadeema, Leitrim, and Haskell are looking like the two teams that'll get straight to a semi final. But there could be upsets in that Senior B Championship before the weekend is out. Looking at the Intermediate Hurling Championship, quarter past four in Loughrea. Stephen, probably one of the games of the weekend here when you consider what's at stake. Mullagh Court Ceylon. Um, the winner of this game will get Premier Intermediate Hurling, and the loser obviously will be a Premier Junior team, but still in the championship. So it's season defining here now for Mullagh Court and Ceylon.
Yeah, but two teams who are always have been in the back end of the championship in recent years. You know, Millie Court probably were unlucky on a couple of occasions that they didn't make the step up and win that intermediate championship. Where Silent have been got to a couple of semi-finals in a row there. Yeah, it's going to be a hugely interesting one. It's kind of unconscionable to think that either of these two could end up as a Premier Junior team next year, but that's what's facing them this weekend. So I can imagine that the blood is going to be up in a lot of these games because it's one thing, dropping down from a senior B to maybe Premier Intermediate. Okay, you're going to be one of the stronger teams down there in Premier Intermediate, but dropping down to junior, where you're probably going to have a number of second teams as well that can catch you on any given day, particularly at the start of the championship, or first teams that are looking to progress up the way. I just think that these games this weekend in the intermediate are going to be ferocious. That's the way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. I like this game. There's so much at stake for both, Brian, isn't
Yeah.
there?
There is, but it's no good to either team, whichever team loses. It's no good for hurling. It's no good for their development of the game. It's critical that that from both these areas, like they're struggling with numbers. They're struggling to keep hurling alive. They're in particular Aircourt massive tradition. If they lose that game and go down, go down another level, of what's going to entice younger people to keep coming and keep playing, what's going to happen in the club. It's bigger than big, because, and the same with Silent. Look at the strides they've made. You know what I mean? They've made huge progress in the last number of years. They're doing great work again this year. Um, I don't like that, because I think we should be always trying to promote hurling, not put it down. And I'm a big believer in the highest level you can play it to keep younger lads coming, and the younger people within the club and more interest in the club. And it is where we were brought up and where we played. It's all about your locality and the people in the parish, and you're driving it on. You create a buzz, and we saw it with Crowell's TV a couple of years ago after the COVID thing. It all just clicked in, and I'd fear for either of these clubs that lose this game next year. Genuinely would, and I'd fear for hurling in their locality. I think Aircourt will win it, but that's based on tradition, based on very little knowledge of seeing them both playing this year. But for either side, my heart will go out them, because I think hurling's going to be the loser at the end of that.
When I was chatting to Claude Gagan, amazingly, if either of these teams was to go on and win the championship, they'd still be a junior team next year, because they had to structure it through the group format there. So that's the way it works. So it's not really season ending for both here. They've obviously both bet at tonight. So um, you would expect though that it's going to be Cylon and Aircourt second and third there, and Scahannon Montbellew probably likely to top this group, given they're coming up against that tonight second team who haven't won a game yet. But who are you going for in this one, Stephen?
Yeah, I think like Brian, going on tradition, Mellows Aircourt, like Silent have done wonderful, and like the Keelan Craven, they have a fabulous hurler. But I just think Mellows Aircourt might just have a little too much for them on this occasion.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against you there. I'm gonna go with Tyler. I actually think that having Keelan Craven back is huge for them. Um, but that game's in Loughrea, 4:15 on Saturday. It's kind of Montbellew, my law at Athenry, 4:15 on Saturday. Brian, you'd expect Scanlon Montbellew, my law, to come through this, just given, I suppose, Athenry haven't got a win yet, and they're out of the championship here.
And so they should be. They have a lot of good players. They've good talent down there. They hadn't the best of year last year, but they seem to have got things going right this year. And they should be winning that. Like the nice second team, when your first team is going well, your second team often suffers. You know what I mean? And it's very seldom the two of them come along. But and Silent give Athenry, they were good value for their win. No, but Scanlon, Montbellew, my last should win that.
Yeah, you'd expect Scanlon to come through that, Stephen.
Yeah, I've seen them a couple of times this year now, and to be honest, I'm very impressed with their hurling. There's some very good players, the Lohans, Oisin, and like I think for them it's hugely important as well that they do push on and they do try and retain that Premier Intermediate status, because no more than like Ceylon and you're looking right down through it, like Abbey Knockmoy, it's nearly unconscionable to think that they could end up down or down there in that danger zone as well. And a down as well, and a down hurlers, like they're trying to promote hurling in a down, which is traditionally a football stronghold. So yeah, but I do think Scahannon will have enough for this one.
Looking at Group 2 then, Carnmore and Crowell, 4:15 in Pearse Stadium on Saturday. It's nearly the same thing here again. Stephen, you'd expect Carnmore to come through this one.
Yeah, you would, but you know what? I was at the Crowell Carnmore game last year in Gort, and Crowell could have taken them that day. And I think 2 years ago, was it 2 or 3 years ago, did take them in a first round fixture. I know Carnmore have kicked on since then, but there's a lot of good players in that Crowell intermediate team, and a lot of them, you would say, a lot of them maybe are not that very far away from playing senior hurling. So yes, Carnmore will be favourites, but I'd give Crowell. I think Crowell will make it difficult for them anyway.
Yeah, Brian, it's beginning to look like Carnmore are finally beginning to kick on here.
Yeah, and they're another club that needs to kick on. They need to come back up. They've had a lot of good young players that's come through, a lot of ranks at underage. they need to be pushing on now. Like Crowell, I think they lost Sean Gilligan. I think they lost one or two to the senior setup. But even so, even if they didn't, like Karen Moore's first team should be winning that. Um, but I do think Crowell are making good inroads. That they had chances against Clymer and they just didn't come off for them. And there was one key turning point in the game, and Clymer went on to win it. But I think Karen Moore sees the opportunity, and I can't see them letting that slip.
Yeah, if you look at the other game, Abbey Knockmoy and Craughwell, that's at 4:15 as well on Saturday in Duggan Park. If Abbey lose this, they're out of the championship and they'll be a Premier Junior team next year. So it's a must-win really for them against Clymer, and then you'd have a little mini table developing between Clymer, Craughwell, and Abbey. If Carmore are to win, you'd have Clymer, Craughwell, and Abbey all on 2 points, but. On this Clymer Abbey Knockmoy game, how do you see it going, Stephen?
You can imagine Clymer, I think Abbey Knockmoy have really struggled this year, even though they put in a better performance last day out. Um, yeah, I just feel that Clymer have got a lot of big game experience the last number of years, where Abbey maybe not so. And again, there's injuries there, I think, in Abbey Knockmoy as well at the moment, and they're also fighting relegation in football, and that's going to take its toll, especially when you have a crossover of players. To be honest, I don't know how many this year they have. I know the two Flahertys aren't playing football this year, anyway, and I've went to the hurling side. But it's again to think that Abbey Knockmoy, who in the 80s you were looking at them and in awe of them, and to think now that they could be down playing Premier Junior, like it's as Brian said. Some clubs you just don't want to see go down, and it's not good for hurling that they will go down to junior level.
With this, obviously, Brian, Aidan Ryan into his first year in charge of Clymer here. Is this one you'd expect Clymer to come through?
It is, and they did good. They did well to beat, like, so they should be beating Crowell second team the last day. Clymer probably they've fallen back a bit in the last year or two. Like I was involved last night in that relegation game against them. They had a lot of injuries, I know, but the year they were making strides, and then it just seems to have gone backwards. And I think it's a big year for Clymer because they internally they believe they should be a step higher, and maybe rightly so. But there's a lot of good teams in that grade. And I'd expect them to win the next year, definitely. And I'd expect them to be thereabouts. I know that depending on who's available for them again, but there's a lot of strong teams there. I feel sorry for them, like why you don't like to see a team again. I know the struggles they've had, to go down to go down where they're going, but I don't see any other outcome other than that come this weekend.
Looking at Group 3, it's nearly a foregone conclusion. It'll probably come into scoring difference between Ballygare and Kinvara. Clarinbridge already through to the knockouts, Annadown out of the championship, but Ballygare against Annadown and Kinvara against Clarinbridge. Hard to look past Ballygare, Kinvara here, Brian.
Yeah, no, I think that's been one of the two easier ones. I don't think we'll go disagreeing with each other in this one, but um, I think Kinvara, there's a lot of teams there that really expect to be higher than where they're playing. And Kinvara, one of these, you know, Ballygare lost a lot of players or a few players, and it did affect them. And with all credit to them, they've they've kept their head above water and are coming back, and they're making good inroads again. But I think Kinvara, they'll have a big say in the whole championship, so they should do, like with Conor Whelan, whatever, etc. They have a lot of good players, they have a lot of good young players coming through, and they'll be expecting to push on big time in this.
Yeah, Ballygare's early season form has obviously been really impressive too, and they've kept that momentum up. Canberra going close last year, they've kept that up too. They obviously drew in the last round, but you'd expect them both to win too, Stephen, again this weekend.
Yeah. I think we need stay too long on this, because I think the way things are going, that they're the two stronger teams in these respective ties, and Belligare and Canberra had a pretty strong league form as well, and they've carried that through into the championship. And Belligare have made massive inroads, and it'll be interesting for Belligare because St Brendan's are also through to the knockout stages in the intermediate football as well, and again a lot of crossover there. So it's about managing those players coming to the knockout stages of the hurling intermediate hurling championship. Canberra Brian is right, probably have aspirations of being higher up in the food chain of Galway hurling. And they're certainly making inroads that they've, referenced Conor Whelan there already, but Dara Helbert as well has having a fine season among others. So yeah, it's going to be. I think both will take the wins there, and it's just a matter of who puts up how many scores in after that. I think Ballygar are plus 21, Kinvara plus 18, so Ballygar do have that 3 point head start, and that could be significant come the weekend.
Yeah, they'll both be looking to rack up the scores there at the weekend. Looking at Group 4 then, Rahu Newcastle, 6 o'clock in Loughrea on Saturday evening. A straight shootout here, Stephen, for top spot in the group. Both already secured their Premier Intermediate status. A draw will do Beha or a win, and Rahun need to win this one to go straight through to the last eight.
Yeah, and Rahun Newcastle and Bath is going to be an interesting game for me anyway, because Bath haven't come down from Senior B last year, are probably operating more comfortably at this level than they have in Senior in recent years, and have a genuine chance of pulling a title here. And Rahun Newcastle have probably been they're probably sick of being called the bridesmaids at this stage, but getting so far in the championship every year, but just cannot seem to get over the line. So that'll be a good test to see where both teams are at, and yeah, maybe just Bath's experience maybe might just be enough to get them over in this one.
Yeah, Brian, still a huge amount of quality in this Beha team. You look, Pork Landers, Adrian Toohey, Evan Hunt, Joe Gantley still doing it. Loads of quality in this Beha team.
There is, yeah, there is, and like Beha were very, very. They were pushing above the weight for a long time and keeping where they were, and they seem to have steadied the ship a little bit down here, and they have the smarts, they have their streetwise, to play. They're doing great work, have done great system over the club. As is Rahun. Like, I know that Rahun are putting in huge work as well, and they've made great strides. It'll be an interesting game. I probably echo what Stevie said. The traditionalists will always favour the traditional team in this, and which would be better. But Rahun, they're making good inroads, and both clubs are through. So I fancy Beha just a shade, but not much.
Just the final game then, lads. Turloughmore, Kilbacon and Gort at 6 o'clock too on Saturday. Turloughmore already on a point with their draw after Rahun. Kilbacon yet to register any points. Stephen, is it with that draw where you'd expect Turloughmore to come through this?
I think so. Kilbacon, they'll give it everything and they'll fight for their lives, but I just think that Kilbacon, they have struggled at intermediate the last number of years, and they might like to hear this, but maybe they do need to be in a Premier Junior competition to have a little bit of comfort, and to go out and maybe have more realistic chances of pulling wins. And I know it's a numbers game down there as well, and you just hope that they have enough coming through their underage ranks to push them on again. But I just think Turlough may just have enough for them on this occasion, and does it benefit anybody that Kilbacon are down there? I don't think so either. I think again a first team going down into a lower division is never good to see, and we kind of have alluded to that already. But yeah, it'd be nice for Kilbacon more so than Turloughmore. I think that it'd be nice for them if they could get a win in this one before they make their exit.
Yeah, we've even mentioned it earlier on, Brian, with the depth of Turloughmore's senior team, but then I suppose some of these former senior players still playing away with the intermediates too.
Yeah, and they'll be still lining up a chance to get in with a senior team that's going to be at the bidding end of senior championship. You don't know where your local turn where as a player, you know what I mean. I'm sure they'll be all training together or in the same group anyway. As such, I think Kilbacon they haven't really lit the championship up in the last number of years in any shape or form. It's obviously a numbers issue for them. They're lacking the qualities they need to survive at the levels that they're in, and it is a numbers thing. They've joined up with bad underage, you know what I mean, and that's reaping its rewards. They're winning under 14 title this year and that. So I don't know. I learn more than Embinock the same thing is happening there, and it's really, it is what it is. But I think really the numbers are really coming against them. And if you look at the likes of the Oranmore-Marees and the Clarinbridge, they seem to be, even Crowell are getting a lot of people into the parish. Loughrea, big parish at the right. These clubs are beginning to suffer now, and I still go back to what I said in the beginning, downplaying a grade. I know it's the lowest grade that they're probably going to be playing in senior. Does it help them keep hurling going? That's my only concern with that. But they're there because that's what the performance will lead them to be.
Yeah, I know they've lost in Egan and in Fahy too over the
Yeah.
last few years, which have been significant losses for them in particular. But that's all we do have time for on today's show. Massive amount of action to look forward to this weekend. But Stephen and Brian, thanks a million for your time.
Thanks,
No
Paul.
problem.